Well, we are on World War III watch. It's like a crock pot of war rhetoric right now, all thrown into one big pot. Just a few minutes ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping threw his support behind Russian President Vladimir Putin and the security of the Russian state, military security for Russia. A congressional report out this morning warning that a war with Russia and China is on the horizon, and the U.S. should be prepared. Of course, we covered last night U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee, Committee Chairman Mike McCall, authorizing President Biden to use force in a war against Iran. The Biden regime has also discussed using military force if Lebanon-based Hezbollah attacks Israel with rockets. All of these things unfolding in a World War III watch right now. We figured we'd bring in former UN weapons inspector, former U.S. Marine Scott Ritter, whose analysis on geopolitics and everything going on with these strategic war rhetoric right now is so important. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I guess maybe we start with just a few minutes ago, Xi Jinping throwing security support behind Russia. And what does this mean with this new congressional report warning that Russia and China, a war with both of those countries simultaneously, is on the horizon?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what Xi Jinping has done. China and Russia, of course, have a relationship that's superior to any treaty relationship. It's a relationship without any boundaries. This is what they've been saying. But there's been some boundaries. I mean, China has been a little bit reticent about Russia's military incursion into Ukraine. It violates China's Westphalian principles of sovereignty and things of that nature. But I think China has been compelled to reassess its posture, not by Russia's actions, but by the collective West's actions. That China now recognizes that this struggle between Russia in Ukraine isn't about Russia against Ukraine. It's about Russia against the collective West, against NATO, against the United States. And then China has to evaluate the rhetoric and the actions that have been coming out of the United States, its European allies, its Asian allies, in regard to China, the strangulation of China that they're trying to do economically and geopolitically. And China, I think, has realized that the best way to protect China is to align China militarily, from a security standpoint, with the other nation that is lined up against the same enemy set that China's facing, and that's Russia. And this is a huge deal because it's not that China's military is going to be coming over the borders. I mean, I think you'll see some Chinese assistance from a material standpoint. You'll see some of this. You'll see closer cooperation between Russia and China. It won't be a one-way street. Russia has some technology it can offer China that will be devastating to America if China ever incorporates it. But more importantly, it's about the fact that Russia is no longer alone. That China now says we support what you're doing. We're on your side. We're on Team Putin when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to the world, the global position. This is bad news for those in the United States who are trying to resurrect Cold War fantasies of being able to wage and win two wars simultaneously. Back when I was in the Marine Corps, we actually had a posture of fighting 2.5 wars. The way the United States was configured militarily, we could fight a war in Europe using NATO and defeat the Soviet Union. At the same time, we could fight a major war in the Pacific, probably North Korea, and defeat the North Korean Chinese threat, and still have sufficient force to engage in a smaller war, say in the Middle East, where we would fight a holding action until we won one of the two major wars and diverted the resources in to win the half war. And we had the forces to do that. We trained to do it. We were ready to do it. And thank God we never had to do it, but I think we could have done it. Today, we went from 2.5 to 2 wars. Today, we're down to literally one war, and we can't even do one war. Let's be honest. If we went to war right now in Europe against Russia, we don't have sufficient military force to prevail. We can fight a war. We can't win a war. If we went to war against China, We could fight a war, but we can't win it. And that's even if we bring the totality of our conventional strength into play. And now we're talking about doing it against both Russia and China. The costs that are going to be associated with this are phenomenal. First of all, it's going to require a massive expansion of our conventional military power. The United States Army just had a shortfall in recruiting. They are literally tens of thousands of personnel short of what their authorized manning strength is, which means instead of expanding the U.S. Army, they have to shrink it. They don't have enough men or women to fill the ranks. And so certain units, certain capabilities are being taken down to zero because you don't have manpower to do this. And now Congress is talking about beefing up. With what? Are you going to go to a draft? Have you run that by the American people? Is it really smart for the United States to talk about fighting a two war? Do we know what that means? It means that America has to leave our continental fortress, go across the oceans to fight a war over there in their backyard. In their backyard. That means we're taking Russia on, in a confrontation in Europe where Russia's logistics are literally right there next to them. They're supplying themselves from interior lines of communication. We will have to extend ourselves. We don't have sufficient logistical buildup in Europe anymore. It would cost billions to do that. That means we have to sustain from the United States with lengthy supply lines. It's literally suicidal. So this is insane. Biden's talking about potential conflict with Iran. We can't fight Iran. We don't have the forces to do that. We fought the Gulf War in 1991 by having friendly ports and airfields that we could bring our ships into and offload in an uncontested fashion and land and offload troops. How are we going to do that in a war with Iran? They're going to blow up every port, blow up every airfield. It means now we have to do a forcible entry into an Iranian port, Chabahar, Bandar Abbas. We don't have the force structure to do that. Iran has missiles that'll sink our ships before we get there. They're parking 2 aircraft carrier battle groups off the coast of Lebanon with a 2,000 man amphibious ready group to fight Hezbollah. Hezbollah's 100,000 men, highly trained, dug in to the hills of southern Lebanon who've been preparing for this fight. We have gone insane. Let me just make it very clear. America can't fight and win a war anywhere in the world right now against any power that has any military capability. We're that weak. We are literally that weak.
We can't even stop people coming across our own southern border to the tune of 10 to 15,000 people per day. So we can really extend ourselves going all the way to China or Iran and turning, of course, former allies, I suppose, in Saudi Arabia against us as well. The Biden administration getting the cold shoulder from Saudi Arabia. But the Biden administration seems keen on raising another $100 billion for the war in Ukraine and to funnel money into Israel. Over the past 24 hours, Zelensky on the Ukrainian side has said, see, all of these long-range weapons you've sent us have worked. We now took down 8 Russian helicopters, so keep sending us money. And the Biden administration seems keen on doing that. Where is this money going to go? What is it going to be used for in Ukraine? Hasn't this been finished now? Aren't we done here?
Well, Ukraine's over. First of all, let's put the attack on the airfield in perspective. Ukraine fired, I believe, a total of 7 ATACMS and the cluster bomb munition variant of the HIMARS. 5 of them were shot down by the Russians. This is the Russians' first look at this weapon system, meaning that their air defense wasn't configured to defeat this weapon system, but they shot down 5. The 2 that hit didn't get direct hits. They damaged 2 helicopters. They destroyed 2 helicopters. They damaged 7. Those 7 will be brought back into working order. So basically, Ukraine launched a surprise attack using their miracle weapon, and they destroyed 2 helicopters. Russia now has the radar tracked, has all the technical data they need on this, the guidance system. Ukraine will never get a chance like it had. This was supposed to be a massive blow, a surprise attack that would annihilate a Russian airfield. It was a surprise attack. Russia shot down the vast majority of the missiles. The 2 that hit did not deliver a knockout blow, and they will never get this surprise opportunity again. That's it for ATACMS. So we shouldn't be talking about ATACMS anymore. They used it. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. It's done. What else do we have up our sleeves to give? This is it. I mean, what, F-16s now? But remember, those are old aircraft. Nobody's talking about F-16s anymore. The ATACMS was the miracle weapon. It was the one everybody said we had to give to Ukraine to level the battlefield. We gave it to them. They used it. It isn't much. I told everybody that. It's not that good of a weapon system. And used against the Russians, it won't be any good. Now the Russians have built up a threat model. They're going to reconfigure their air defense, tinker it, and it's going to get shot down every time it's fired. Ukraine's got nothing left. Their strategic reserves are empty. They're fighting a series of battles on the front line right now where the operational tempo is dictated by Russia. Ukraine, whatever's left of the Ukrainian army is dying. They have nothing to replace it. Russia's taken over the initiative across the line of contact. It's all over but the screaming and the shouting of dead Ukrainians. And I don't mean to be too callous on it, but this is what it's about. It's about dead Ukrainians. The longer this goes on, the more Ukrainians are going to die and the more territory Ukraine's going to lose. Right now, Russia has initiated offensive operations in the Kupiansk area in the northern part of the line of contact. What's important about that? And again, this is something that most Westerners don't get. They don't understand. Russia kept that sector of the battlefield quiet. Why? Because it's on Ukrainian soil. Russia has always said, we're going to give this back to you when this war is done. We don't want to occupy Ukraine, but we have to maintain this so that we protect our defensive positions in Lugansk, south of that. But they didn't go on the offensive there for the longest time. They have now. What does that mean? See, some people don't understand that when the Russians make a decision to go on the offensive on Ukrainian soil, it means they're now going to own that soil. They're never giving it back. Kharkov is goodbye. Russia will take Kharkov now. And once Russia gobbles up Kharkov, they're going to gobble up everything else. Ukraine just made a fatal mistake and they don't even know it. I mean, Zelensky, if you're watching, please listen to me. You just lost Kharkov. You just lost Kharkov. If you continue, you will lose Dnipropetrovsk. If you continue, you will lose Mykolaiv. You will lose Odessa. It's over. Save your country. Stop the fighting. But they don't get it. And nobody in the West gets it either. When I say this to Western analysts, they go, Scott, that's just Russian propaganda. Oh, no, it's real. It's what the Russians do. They're very honest and sincere. Remember, they're the ones that gave Kiev back to the Ukrainians. Ukraine didn't recapture it. The Russians had fought the Ukrainians to a standstill. They had the operational initiative, but Russia wanted to end the war back in March, April of last year. Russia voluntarily turned over this territory, and Russia was going to turn over all the territory of Ukraine. But the West wouldn't allow Zelensky to pursue peace. And now Zelensky's lost everything, and he's going to lose more.
And they don't seem to understand that. So now Ukraine has basically turned into what we all thought it would become, which is basically an aircraft carrier for NATO. I suppose that's the future of what the rest of Ukraine will look like. Is that what we're going to see in Israel now, that this will be a staging ground for this larger regional Middle East war right now? I mean, when Biden leaves, of course, the rumblings are nothing's going to happen, no major offensive is going to happen till President Biden leaves Israel, and then all hell is going to break loose. How do you see this unfolding over the next 24, 48 hours?
Look, the Israelis right now are scared to death. Scared to death. They mobilized 360,000 reservists. Let's just put this in perspective. The vast majority of these people did their 2.5 years military service. The Israeli army is not very good. They have some units that are very capable, some of their special forces units, some of their specialized units. They have some technical units that are very good, but the mainstay, the infantry units, the armor units, they're not very good. And they have become even less good by being pulled back from conventional combat duties to policing duties in the West Bank. So most of these reservists spent their time walking the streets in the West Bank, learning how to break the arms of 10-year-old children, how to rough up 15-year-old girls, and how to belly shoot 60-year-old men. That's what they did. Brutal occupation. It was horribly demoralizing for many of these people. They didn't like doing this. And when they left the military, they didn't have a high regard for the military. So now they're back, but this time they're being called upon to do something that nobody in Israel wants to do. go into Gaza. Why? Because in 2014, they went into Gaza and Hamas handed it to them. In 2006, they went up against Hezbollah and Hezbollah handed it to them. The Israeli army just isn't that good, and they're scared to death because Hamas is waiting for them. This is one giant ambush, and the Israeli intelligence is blind. They don't know where they are. They're going to have to go in there and probe, and as they probe, they're going to be blown up, ambushed, slaughtered, and they know this. The other thing that scares them is once they go into Gaza, they're going to be committed to that battle with the bulk of their reserves. And if at that time Hezbollah decides to open up a northern front, Israel's got nothing left. And even if they had something left, they can't beat Hezbollah. They can't beat Hezbollah. They know it. They've exercised it. Last year, Chariots of Fire. This year, Firm Hand. Those are the names of two major exercises where Israel tested its ability to fight a conflict against the Palestinians and Hamas in the West Bank and Hezbollah up north, and they can't do it. They don't have the resources to do it. Now you throw in Iran, and they're definitely screwed. So America is stepping in saying, hey, we're going to flex our muscle in an effort to deter Hezbollah and Iran from striking. It's not working. 2 aircraft carrier battle groups and an amphibious ready group with 2,000 Marines does not a war win. And we don't have anything behind that. We got nothing. And so if they come, so I think what's going to happen is that Biden is going to try and talk some common sense into Netanyahu and let him know the hard reality that, yeah, we flexed our muscles here, but if Hezbollah comes across the border, we'll bomb them, but we can't stop them. It's up to you. And if you can't stop them, you're screwed. And so you might want to think about coming up with a different solution than the one you're picking right now, a full-faced invasion. There's a lot of things go behind the scenes. The Israelis aren't as good as everybody thinks they are. They're very scared. Netanyahu's very weak. Remember how weak he was moving into this before the Hamas invasion. He was getting ready to collapse because of what he was doing with the judiciary and the reform, the rewriting of basic law. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis were in the streets. It's gotten worse for him because everybody's blaming. He was Mr. Security. I will protect you. I am the man. And look what happened. Nobody trusts him. There's a lot of Israeli talk going on, a lot of hot air coming out of the mouthpieces of Netanyahu's minions. None of it's backed up by reality. And the fact is, Israel's extraordinarily weak, extraordinarily exposed, extraordinarily scared, and America doesn't have a solution for them.
And I guess is the template to look at what would happen to Israel, just look at Ukraine?
It would be worse than that because Ukrainians right now don't have a place to run to. Millions of Israelis have dual citizenship, and they'll just leave Israel. I mean, that's the death of Israel. Every Israeli I've talked to said we can't. This happened in 1991 when the Iraqi Scuds came in. One of the big things they were saying is it's not so much the damage, physical damage that the Iraqi Scuds are doing, it's the emotional and psychological damage it's doing to Israelis. If we can't get the European Jews and the American Jews to want to come here and stay here, it's over for the Israeli experiment. And if Hezbollah can come in and threaten northern Israel, if Hamas can continue to threaten, it's over. People will flee. Millions of people will leave and they will never come back. And that's it for Israel. So I think right now Israel's in a very difficult situation where the Israeli experiment has been shown to be a failure. And now the question is, how do you get out of this? They're going to have to come up with a solution for Palestine, one that's acceptable to the Palestinians. And Israel no longer has the superior position where they get to dictate outcomes. They're actually going to have to negotiate. And this is where the United States could be of great benefit. But we can't because we continually shoot ourselves in the foot by opening our mouths and threatening war with people when we can't beat them.
Well said. Well, President Biden, we'll see how long he stays there. A bunch of meetings, of course, in the Middle East have been canceled in Jordan and Saudi Arabia, so maybe his trip will be a little bit shorter. We'll be watching this very closely over the next 48 hours. Scott Ritter, as always, it's a pleasure having you here on the show. Your analysis is second to none. We really, really appreciate it, and thanks for your great thoughts here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.